When thinking of a specific city, we tend to remember what is called its skyline, or the sequence of buildings outlined against the horizon. In the case of truly big cities, that can be difficult to accomplish, since they're just too big. But how big can a skyline be? São Paulo's skyline seems to go on forever, and even with that, it keeps growing.
Vem morena me namorar, com seu swing me conquistar. Vem morena, vem dançar, com seu cabelo me encantar. Vem morena me namorar, com seu swing me conquistar. Vem morena, vem dançar, com seu cabelo me encantar.
One of São Paulo's most notable characteristics is that it spreads throughout a vast territory, which grants it several different skylines. The city's global notoriety has always been overshadowed by its local neighbor, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil's crown jewel and one of the modern wonders of the world for its beaches and rare natural beauty. On the sidelines, a rivalry between São Paulo and Rio has instinctively forced the less famous city to work hard through the years and earn recognition by creating its own value. The result has been a gigantic supercity, which has gradually been discovered by cool hunters as a trend-setting hotspot with abundant culture and entertainment, unlike any place on earth. Brazil's continental proportions warrant a city of São Paulo's magnitude. Unfortunately, the country has also been plagued with corrupt governments for decades, if not centuries, and its people have struggled to build a nation and society that slowly evolve away from the vices of greedy politicians. Brazil is sometimes compared to a certain country known as Belindia, a fictitious nation created by Brazilian economist Edmar Basha, which describes the conjunction of Belgium and India. The idea is that Brazil has regions where standards of living are equivalent to those of Belgium, and other regions where the standards are equivalent to the poverty-stricken portions of India.
See, in my 3 visits in this country, I have noticed that this country is facing a problem of political instability, the bureaucracy that it has, the kind of corruption from the grassroots level that has been noticed here. And I have considerable understanding towards this because we face the same limitations in our country, that is India.
Despite the tragic reality that prevails throughout the country, São Paulo is the best example for the rest of Brazil to follow, where hard work has yielded a city with all the benefits that the world's greatest urban centers offer.
São Paulo sempre foi e é o centro cultural do país, né? E, sem menosprezar o Rio de Janeiro, que tem designers criadores como Sérgio Rodrigues, e a Bahia, que tem designers e artistas maravilhosos, e diversos outros estados.
It is a city that, relatively speaking, has always stood out in structure and development, and been known as completely business-oriented. In recent years, however, a cultural renaissance has brought São Paulo to a new level in attracting foreign interest. Along with the general chaos that can be just around the corner, as with any major city in the world.
Any major city has a bit of chaos. London, New York, I mean, there are chaotic cities. Any big city has a bit of chaos, but I think São Paulo is a little bit more, because I think it wasn't as planned as other major cities are.
poverty, violence, traffic, and pollution. These are all still issues that bring concern to any local citizen or tourist. But the countless advantages of being in such a rich cultural melting pot have been more than convincing.
Eu nasci em São Paulo, nesta cidade tentacular, que não era assim tão tentacular em 1938.
I'm here on an expedition to evolve the greatest cities which I've seen in my life, that is Sao Paulo.
Let's begin with a look at the different city-sized neighborhoods of this megalopolis. Brooklyn is the new financial center, formerly an industrial and middle-class residential neighborhood that stood in the Santo Amaro region, which was a more suburban area in the past. That is why a major airport was built here, before the city grew around it. Today, Congonhas Airport does only domestic travel. Moving north is Ibirapuera Park, entirely designed by Oscar Niemeyer, which stands as a main attraction in town. Further north is Paulista Avenue, the city's most important center of finance and culture. This is the city's official meeting spot, period. Close to Paulista is Pacaembu Stadium and the region of Pinheiros, with another vibrant cultural scene. Below Paulista is Cerqueira César, famous for its luxurious commerce and residences, and known as the first of the neighborhoods in the unofficial but regularly mentioned Jardins region, or gardens. Although the Paulista region is São Paulo's most iconic, it's further north, in the original historic downtown region where the city began. This is the original skyline, where the first skyscrapers emerged in this town.
Não se fala em São Paulo. Quando se fala em Brasil, se fala em Rio de Janeiro, em samba, em futebol, em mulheres, mulheres bonitas e aí tudo mais tal, mas em relação à cultura.
The city's diversity is remarkable. It has the largest Italian population outside of Italy and is the third largest Italian city in the world. It has the largest Japanese population and is the largest Japanese city outside of Japan, and includes an enormous Japantown region called Liberdade.
Esse contato com esses músicos estrangeiros, por exemplo, se vindo para o Brasil, por exemplo, japoneses, vieram japoneses ótimos, que formaram escola aqui no Brasil e tudo mais tal. Também a colônia japonesa deu um grande contributo, sobretudo nas cordas, instrumentos de corda. Então, o contributo é muito grande, diga-se mesmo. E hoje nós temos excelentes músicos da colônia japonesa meritórios realmente, que têm feito um trabalho sensível aqui em São Paulo.
It is the largest Lebanese city outside of Lebanon, the largest Portuguese city outside of Portugal, and the largest Spanish city outside of Spain. Yet, it's not just with population that you'll find diversity. The city has become famous for its various different backdrops, which have turned into a reference for the film, television, and advertising industries. You can find antique European buildings, modern skyscrapers, rainforests, and the city is just a short drive from scenic tropical beaches. São Paulo sits at 760 meters above sea level, and a new tunnel that cuts through the mountains makes the coast a mere half-hour away. Rain is perhaps the city's greatest environmental concern, both in excess and in absence. One of the city's nicknames has always been the City of Drizzle, but in 2014, a water shortage crept up after a few dry years, and São Paulo's reservoirs were compromised. The several rivers that cut through São Paulo are heavily polluted, and useless in the supply of water to industry and residences. This recent water shortage crisis has fortunately diminished with the return of heavy rains, so our beloved politicians appear to have looked out. On the other hand, the rainy season in the summer can also cause critical flooding, and despite the several rain collection reservoirs built in the past decades, it remains a concern. If there's any hope for Brazil, it begins in São Paulo. It is where the country's independence from Portugal was proclaimed, where a military dictatorship was brought down in the 80s, and the lead setting for recent protests against the current government's corruption scandals. A population of over 12 million spans the municipality, and over 20 million the metro area. São Paulo State is the third most populated political unit in all of South America, behind only Colombia and Brazil itself. Argentina, Chile, and every other country in the continent is less populated than the state of São Paulo. It represents 40% of the country's entire GDP and is known as Brazil's locomotive. As the eponymous capital of this locomotive, São Paulo is curiously not as famous worldwide as it should be. There's an aspect of timidity in promoting the city globally, perhaps due to its proximity to Rio de Janeiro. The coastal city's natural beauty overshadows the raw urban giant that is São Paulo. But that has worked in its favor. Due to this lack of obvious natural beauty, Sampa, as it's nicknamed by locals, has developed qualities that only now have been recognized and discovered by visitors, both national and international.
Preponderava Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro era o centro maior cultural brasileiro, não, sem dúvida. Que depois, hoje não. Hoje São Paulo prepondera nitidamente. A diferença é realmente muito grande.
In regards to this rivalry between São Paulo and Rio, it's important to emphasize that Rio was always the place with greatest vocation in arts and culture. Some of the greatest musicians, writers, artists, and entertainers were either from Rio or launched their careers in Rio, especially in the golden age of Brazilian music, in the 60s. In the 21st century, and perhaps in a smaller scale since the 80s, São Paulo has established itself as the go-to location for arts and culture, and there seems to be no turning back on that matter. On January 25th, 1554, São Paulo was born as this college, founded by Jesuits, to begin evangelizing natives who lived atop the sea ridge, known today as Serra do Mar. For 2 centuries, São Paulo was a poor village with little or no growth, until gold was discovered during the 1700s in the state of Minas Gerais, further inland. Soon, ruthless explorers known as Bandeirantes established São Paulo as their first pit stop after climbing the aforementioned sea ridge. One of these explorers, Manuel de Borba Gato, is portrayed in this famous statue in the southern region of the city. Eventually, agriculture took over São Paulo's economy, first with sugarcane, then with coffee. In 1867, a major train station called Luz was built, designed by architect Charles Henry Driver. The São Paulo Railway was the only railway that connected the coast to Brazil's inner states, and that is where the city turned from village to, well, the monster-sized city it is today. Different waves of immigrants throughout history were observed as a defining factor in Brazil's national identity. After a traumatic colonization process with the Portuguese that ran from 1500s to the mid-1800s, and a subsequent slow maturing of the country's industrial sectors, many local intellectuals were forced to travel to Europe to complete their studies.
Bem, é curioso. Nós temos compositores notáveis. Eu diria que foi a partir da segunda metade, final da segunda metade do século XIX, que os compositores brasileiros que tiveram a possibilidade de estudar na Europa, esses compositores não só absorveram toda a cultura e processos composicionais e conviveram com grandes músicos, então a partir desse instante nós começamos a ter os grandes compositores, poderia dizer.
Brazil finally began to prosper in the first decades of the 20th century. A new wave of immigrants came into Brazil. São Paulo had its true birth as a center for the arts in the 1922 Modern Art Week, but remained overshadowed by Rio. Still, many immigrants would choose Sampa as their home for good reasons.
Eu acho que a importância de São Paulo cresceu, sobretudo a partir talvez da segunda, a partir talvez falam muito da semana de 22, né? Que com a semana de 22. Semana de 22, logicamente, teve seu impacto nacionalista, tudo mais e tal. Mas eu acho que a razão principal foi a razão econômica. E que São Paulo tinha mais possibilidades financeiras do que os outros estados. Isto é notório. Isto, logicamente, fez toda a diferença e que foi se acentuando. Primeiramente os barões do café, você sabe muito bem.
Mas São Paulo, como no caso desses imigrantes que se nacionalizaram brasileiros com muito orgulho, quando chegaram, o Jorge Zalzupin e o Jean Gilon, quando chegaram no Brasil, no Rio de Janeiro, se divertiram muito, mas não conseguiram trabalhar. Então vieram para São Paulo, isso no final dos anos 40, meados dos 50, vieram para São Paulo para trabalhar. Então, São Paulo é a força motora de tudo, e aqui muitos desses designers fundaram suas fábricas, seus ateliês, suas lojas. Então, mesmo que houvessem criações, e ainda há muita criação de outras cidades, outros centros, São Paulo tem esse dom de centralizar, de trabalhar culturalmente muito bem esse assunto, assim como outros, né?
No final dos anos 60, 70, haviam talvez meia dúzia de galerias importantes que expunham os principais artistas do país e que todas as exposições e vernissagens eram um grande acontecimento social pela raridade e por os poucos artistas que aqui eventualmente atuavam. Um mercado ainda restrito, ligados a pequenos ou grandes colecionadores, mas de pequenos números, mas muito atuantes. E os leilões em São Paulo, quando começaram em 70, 71, 72, que eram os leilões dos principais artistas do país, no máximo 3, 4 ou 5 por ano. Hoje isso você encontra até por dia na cidade de São Paulo. Existem hoje 15 ou 16 casas fazendo leilões, algumas 3 ou 4 anuais, outras todos os meses ou toda semana, abrangendo todos os artistas, todos os preços e todos os valores. E isso tudo se condicionou no mercado que já está praticamente há 30, 40 anos em atuação.
Hundreds of century-old buildings still stand and have been protected as landmarks, and São Paulo grew in other directions. You'll still find arts and culture in abundance, and the city's stock exchange is still located downtown, but the main financial center shifted due south to Paulista Avenue. It was once an avenue filled only with lavish mansions built in the early 1900s, but new architectural movements that privileged a more practical use of space were coming into play. In 1946, an iconic building called Louveira was built in the Higienópolis neighborhood by architects Vila Nova Artigas and Carlos Cascaldi. The Louveira was the first of a new style in the modernist movement that spread throughout the city, and the real estate market imposed the construction of high-rises in Paulista between the 60s and the 70s, which now fill the avenue's entire extension. Several television and radio transmission towers also sit atop Paulista, as it is topographically one of the city's highest spots. Paulista has become the city's main postcard, where locals meet in various celebrations such as soccer championships, New Year's, the Gay Parade, as well as more and more common political protests, although it is still the official meeting spot for most major local events. Parallel to the shift in financial centers, São Paulo grew in other directions, known as North, South, East, and this is the West. The conglomerate of Barra Funda, Lapa, Pompeia, Perdizes, Pinheiros flourished as industrial, commercial, and residential neighborhoods in the early 1900s. It soon became a crib for arts and culture, due to its own down-to-earth roots. In the north, on the border with a large rainforest reservation, lots of nature, and upper and lower class regions. The iconic East Zone, ZL, Zona Leste, is its own city, with a different accent to its locals, due to their Italian roots, similar to Brooklyn and New York. The southern region is the largest section of the city, divided into upper class in the central zone, and further off, lower class neighborhoods, and rural locations, including native Brazilian tribes. The rich neighborhood surrounding what is popularly known as the Jardins, or Gardens, became the city's Beverly Hills.
This is Oscar Freire, São Paulo's equivalent of LA's Rodeo Drive, a place where the rich, the famous, and the glamorous come to shop. A street where people from all over the world come to find some of the most expensive and high-end stores.
Now, many of the neighborhoods in Jardins were planned and built in the Garden City concept, introduced by Sir Ebenezer Howard in the late 1890s. An English company called City of São Paulo Improvements Freehold planned and built several central residential neighborhoods in the early 1900s, such as Jardim América and Alto de Pinheiros. These neighborhoods are surrounded by greenbelts of lush vegetation, with streets not forming grids, planned to avoid having them become shortcuts for traffic. This noble intention backfired, as the winding residential streets are now packed with gridlock during rush hour. Despite that, these garden cities serve as large pockets of vegetation as a relief to the excess of concrete. The city kept growing beyond the Jardins' strictly residential area, with the birth of new financial centers, including the neighborhoods of Itaim, Vila Olímpia, and Brooklyn, and have become São Paulo's new business centers. Today, Faria Lima and Berrini Avenues and their respective regions concentrate the country's headquarters for major global corporations. One of the first office towers in the region is located between the neighborhoods of Pinheiros and Itaim. The Dacon Tower was completed in 1981 and finished entirely in green Japanese glass. It set a trend in São Paulo for glass buildings, which now are found throughout every major neighborhood. These new financial regions differ greatly from the look of the older parts of town, with a more futuristic style designed by architect Carlos Bratsky in Brooklyn, which is today the city's financial nerve center.
Eu vivo o desafio de viver nessa cidade, sabe? De ser confrontado, de, sabe, incentivado, de você olhar e falar, meu, se eu entrar nessa rua aqui, eu vou sair naquela? Não, se vira. Tipo, a doideira, não é uma cidade quarteirão. Entra aqui, você quer se dar bem, você vai entrar aqui, você acha que você vai sair lá na frente? Você não vai. Você sabe andar por aí? Então não entra, fica aqui na via, vai com calma, respeita o trânsito. Ah, não, vou entrar aqui à direita, vou sair lá na frente, de malandrão. Não vai não. Vai pra Vila Prudente. Sacou? Você muda seu caminho inteiro. É isso. O que não é quarteirão não tem como ser tranquilo. Não é fácil, né?
Para a música em São Paulo, eu diria que teve a migração alemã, que por acaso se instalou aqui na Zona Sul, região do Brooklyn, Santa Amaro. E esses alemães, eles ajudavam a promover a música, né? Houve também uma migração de judeus que vieram, fugindo da guerra, né? E que se estabeleceram e que trouxeram o gosto pela música, isto de uma maneira muito acentuada, né? De outro lado, também não negligenciamos a importância fundamental da imigração italiana. E se você pensar, as nossas orquestras, curiosamente as orquestras, a orquestra municipal, etc., você via uma quantidade de italianos mesmo que tocavam, regentes italianos, né? Que eram regentes titulares da Orquestra Municipal de São Paulo. E músicos muito bons que formavam quartetos, pertenciam às orquestras, etc., e se tornaram professores de grande mérito. Se você pegar, por exemplo, até na composição, um compositor como Francisco Mignoni, com toda a origem italiana, né? Que é notória, tudo mais tal, e tantos outros, aqui Eduardo de Guarnieri, que foi um excelente regente, e pai do Jean Francesco Guarnieri, ele era italiano e era regente titular da orquestra municipal. E músicos das estantes tinham muitos italianos, curiosamente, mais do que até alemães.
With all this growth, several historic landmarks were lost. But a few exceptions gave birth to a curious trend in the city. Organizations for the preservation of landmarks have gained considerable leverage. And as these remaining historic buildings have been identified, many new constructions that would have replaced these relics altogether have been required to be built around them. One of the more recent examples is the Casa Bandeirante, a colonial construction from the 18th century located on an expensive lot in Itaim, sold to a real estate company for around $250 million. The company was required to build around that historic landmark, as well as preserve it. In Paulista Avenue itself, 6 of the luxurious mansions were also preserved, and today stand alongside the skyscrapers which substituted for most of those homes. They've become cultural centers, bank agencies, a public school, and are cherished by the population. Each is built in a different architectural style, the oldest dating back to 1905. This trend of building around historic landmarks can be found all over the city, like with this antique home now turned into a museum, a glass skyscraper noticeably built around it. World-class museums have existed for several decades, but only now has this rich cultural aspect disseminated through the entire metropolis, which has become a giant gallery with graffiti, sculptures, and countless interventions.
Eu acho que a arte, a cultura, ela tem o potencial gigante de transformar qualquer cidade.
Behind me is the São Paulo Art Museum, with its free-spanning concrete structure, the biggest in the world after it was built. It also holds the greatest collection of the planet's southern hemisphere, brought to it from war-torn Europe at the end of the Second World War.
MASP's permanent collection includes names like Goya, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Monet, Manet, Renoir, Rodin, Gauguin, Matisse, Picasso, Dalí, and Renaissance's Raphael.
A cidade cresceu muito, Hoje você encontra quase 120, 130 galerias atuando e constantemente fazendo exposições. Existe um salão de arte já de nível internacional que é feito no prédio da Bienal de São Paulo, no período de 3 a 4 dias, que tem um fluxo de público que passa de 30 a 40 mil pessoas. E teremos agora, no mês de agosto, também uma exposição anual feita no Clube Hebraica, de um salão de arte de antiguidades, em que o top de galerias ligadas ao setor, tanto de obras de arte como de antiguidade, lá expõem no decorrer de uma semana. E vem algumas galerias de fora, vem galerias da Argentina, de Portugal, da Espanha, expor nesses salões, trazendo aquilo que há de melhor para ser exibido. Isso tudo se tornou pelo fato de o mercado ter se ampliado, não é? Nos últimos 20 anos ou 25 anos, o país ter se transformado no sentido econômico e um maior número de pessoas se interessarem. A gente sente que, num decorrer de um período, quando eu comecei a trabalhar, que o nível de pessoas que compravam era extremamente elitizadas e com uma faixa de idade que passavam de 45 a 55 anos de idade. Hoje a gente vê que o mercado está atuando e a gente vê garotos de 22, 23, 25, 27 anos de idade, mesmo solteiros, não é? Procurando, adquirindo e colecionando obras, principalmente contemporâneas, que são artistas ligados à sua época, à sua atuação. E uma camada muito ampla de galerias especializadas em artistas de determinado setor. Hoje você pode procurar galerias especializadas em fotografia, em serigrafia, ou só em gravuras, só em desenho, só em escultura, quer dizer, toda uma gama ligada às artes plásticas específicos para cada setor. E um público também dirigido a isso. Sim. Então você tem uma camada muito ampla de ofertas que a cidade hoje oferece.
São Paulo's inhabitants have become proud of the city's new vocation in arts. And with a calendar full of cultural events, it's almost impossible to keep up.
A principal cidade do país, talvez a principal cidade da América do Sul, com toda certeza, para as grandes exposições aqui realizadas e as grandes instituições no sentido de trazer exposições de fora e serem atuantes. O que, a princípio, a gente usava como referência de exposições de arte plástica era a Bienal que vieram dos anos 50. Hoje você encontra, eu posso citar o nome de instituições como a Tomiotaki, o Museu Afro-Brasileiro, que é um museu muito importante que está dentro do Parque do Ibirapuera, o MASP, aqui em São Paulo, que é que tem um acervo que foi feito pelo Chateaubriand no decorrer dos anos 40, 50 e pelo professor Bardi, o Museu de Arte Moderna de São Paulo, que está no Ibirapuera também, o Museu de Arte Contemporânea, que está na cidade universitária, que sempre tem exposições não só de pintores e de artistas brasileiros, mas principalmente de exposições que vêm do exterior. E cabe ressaltar que talvez hoje o principal campo de atuação de exposições que vêm do exterior e no Brasil é a Pinacoteca do Estado, que nos seus dois polos, quanto na Praça da Luz quanto do Antigo DOPS, eles têm feito exposições constantes, não só uma, mas várias no mesmo tempo. É um local que as pessoas que vêm a São Paulo não devem deixar de visitar, que sempre tem uma grande exposição, não só do exterior, mas também do Brasil.
Since the late 90s, the downtown region has garnered greater interest for its historic significance. It's been a collective effort of citizens, government, and private companies giving more care and attention, investing in preservation, and implementing laws that facilitate restoration by abating property taxes and other costs of upkeep. The downtown neighborhoods are large and offer a rich touring experience of time travel. With the advent of online photo sharing, wider crowds from further regions of town have rediscovered downtown São Paulo, even increasing demand for actually residing in this bubbling cauldron of history. Evidently, as with any large city, many of its neighborhoods are not comprised of modern, lavish buildings, but simple commercial and residential construction. Several regions are frequented by middle and lower class citizens, and the surroundings are humble. All around the city, there are countless examples of poverty-stricken regions. Slums can be found in isolated outskirts or among rich neighborhoods. This is São Paulo's most famous slum, Paraisópolis, home to over 60,000 people It is a city within the city. Now, don't be mistaken. Inside the slum city, you can find major stores, schools, and even banks. Many of these are regularly constructed shacks or several stories tall. It's such a large slum city that there are even poor neighborhoods inside this poor neighborhood, with entire regions of more cheaply constructed shacks. In a striking example of extreme contrasts, the Paraisópolis slum is surrounded by luxurious buildings of the Morumbi neighborhood. These buildings have become a famous representation of the poor and rich living side by side in this surprising city. It's a portrait of São Paulo and Brazil. Fortunately, new investments in public space have desegregated this financially diverse population and brought them together in renewed parks, several of which can now be found in São Paulo.
Oh, these are some beautiful trees, some beautiful nature, some beautiful people. This is Trianon Park, one of São Paulo's more than 40. We also have Ibirapuera and the People's Park.
Ibirapuera is São Paulo's main park, and where thousands of locals and tourists stop by to enjoy leisure and cultural activities. In a 2015 article by The Guardian, Ibirapuera was listed as one of the world's 10 best parks. Landscaped by Burle Marx, and with buildings by Oscar Niemeyer, it is definitely a striking oasis in the midst of São Paulo's concrete jungle. Park attendance itself has increased in recent years due to growing interest of locals in enjoying public spaces. Several new parks have been inaugurated, some of which were established by popular acclaim such as the People's Park, which was a vacant lot turned into park by public demand. Another instance where the city comes together is in the weekly street fairs or farmers markets, the Feiras Livres.
Aparecer, ó. Vai ficar famosa aí, ó.
Pra você ter uma ideia, tinha uma feirante que eu vou há 30 anos na mesma feira, né? Eu frequento a mesma feira. Livre, eu adoro feira livre, porque eu acompanhava minha mãe quando eu tinha 10 anos puxando o carrinho, assim, eu sou apaixonado pelo nome de todo mundo lá.
Foi?
São Paulo is the safest large city in Brazil, and that is why these street gatherings have become such a revered trend. But we're still in a third world country, and it's in the streets that we see the city's saddest side as well, the homeless population. In a country with a seriously corrupt government, excessively bureaucratic institutions, and terrible public health care and education, widespread poverty is inevitable. In reality, you can divide São Paulo into two separate cities. One is comprised of lavish, well-structured neighborhoods with luxurious skylines located in the central regions, and the other, lower-class neighborhoods, mostly in the surrounding regions of town, and with limited infrastructure. Aesthetically, the contrast of both sides is obvious. The pompous city is constantly polishing and renewing itself, maintaining an exuberant and clean look. On the other hand, the humble side has no intention of ever being visually stunning. even with limited resources. The creativity of Brazilians leads, for example, to a homeless gym, with an under-the-bridge boxing ring for training those without means in the now popular mixed martial arts. Yet, amidst this government neglect, it's assured that the majority of citizens in miserable conditions are left to fend for themselves. With this excessive poverty comes criminal activity.
Se você pensar, cada de nós vive num gueto, né? Quando vem às vezes músicos, amigos meus de fora, né? e que ficam aqui em casa, a primeira coisa que eles se espantam é de ver as grades nas minhas janelas. Eles não entendem de ter tanta grade e tudo mais tal. Eu falei, precisa ter, tudo mais tal. E assusta. Você teria coragem de andar no centro da cidade à noite? O Teatro Municipal, se você tiver que ir ao Teatro Municipal ou na Sala São Paulo, você tem que ir de Uber ou você tem que ir com táxi especial, etc. Porque, caso contrário, você corre o risco de ser assaltado. Eu me lembro que no Teatro Municipal eu parava na estação, na Roosevelt, que tem um estacionamento lá, e ia a pé ao Teatro Municipal, tranquilamente com a minha mulher, assistimos concertos e depois voltávamos. Isto hoje é rigorosamente impossível. Eu não tenho coragem de fazer isso aí.
Crime in São Paulo was at its worst in the late 90s and has since declined, but remains a grave concern. There are many armed robberies every day, and although there's an unwritten agreement between criminals and victims, where as long as the victim doesn't react and just delivers their wallet and cell phone, he or she won't be shot. But
em princípio, né? Porque às vezes acontece. Eu vi hoje no rádio um cidadão que entregou o cartão e recebeu um tiro no pescoço, assim mesmo, né? Entregou a carteira, estava numa moto, você viu, né? Era o presidente do Bragantino. Deu hoje no rádio. Ontem na Avenida Sumaré. Ele estava no ponto, pararam, roubaram, e ele entregou, disse assim que ele não reagiu e tomou um tiro no pescoço, mas parece que está fora de perigo. Então não vale a pena.
Criminals in Brazil also come up with creative forms of robbery, such as lightning kidnappings, a sort of express kidnapping where they hold the victim at gunpoint and take them for a joyride through several ATMs around town.
Alguns anos atrás, subindo a Tarquínio, você conhece, com um carro, tranquilamente. De repente eu vejo dois cidadãos descendo a Tarquínio, viraram a esquina e descendo numa grande velocidade os dois. E eu, dirigindo assim bem devagar, tudo mais, eu falei, nossa senhora, esses dois correm bem, eu acho que eles estão treinando. Aí quando eles estavam uns 10 metros, eu vi que cada um tinha um revólver. E eu falei, é comigo. Aí imediatamente tirei o cinto, fiz assim, abri a porta, e eles entraram no carro, eu falei, vão em paz. Né? Eles foram embora, saíram a toda com o carro. E, felizmente, semanas depois, eu recuperei o carro, eles deixaram no shopping, eles pegaram o carro para fugir. E passou um carro da polícia, eu fui pro Chiqueirinho, me levaram até a 27ª, né? Que eu fui para lá para fazer depoimento, etc. Eu tremi. Na hora eu estava calmo, depois comecei a tremer as pernas, tudo mais. Tá? Quando eu chego lá, o delegado me pergunta, ele falou, sabe de uma coisa? O senhor teve sorte, o senhor tem sorte de estar vivo. Esses dois, eles antes atiraram no peito de um cidadão de quase 80 anos, que depois eu soube que morreu. E pularam o muro, aí chegou a polícia, eles atiraram na femoral de um policial, pularam, vieram para a rua e fugiram. Então, se o senhor tivesse um gesto, eles teriam um tiro a mais. É que eu falei assim, vão em paz. E eles saíram com o carro lá.
Aqui? Já. Entraram na minha casa e queriam levar meu teclado. Mas faz tempo isso. Anunciei naquele jornal, como é o nome? E o jornal que era para venda, né? Nem me lembro do jornal, né? Os caras foram lá porque tinha uma quadrilha que roubava teclado, né? Aí eles tentaram roubar, mas não conseguiam. Aí eu deixei o... Tudo, esse teclado foi engraçado, era um DX7, né? Aí eu deixei no clã, invadiram o clã onde eu trabalhava, né? E também não roubaram o teclado, roubaram outras coisas. Aí eu vendi para um amigo meu, aí finalmente roubaram do carro. Era um DX7S. Aí levaram do carro, roubaram, falei, pô, tava destinado mesmo, né? São coisas que acontecem, assalto, essas coisas aí, isso aí tem que tomar cuidado, às vezes mesmo cuidado, se não... Né? Tô roubando música. Isso aí eu realmente não acho uma coisa certa não, porque o cara para comprar instrumento aqui sofre, né? Sofre muito. A gente tomar cuidado, observar, mas é uma coisa da sociedade, né? O ladrão existiu desde que o ser humano, né, da caverna, o cara caçou lá o leão para comer, sei lá, caçou lá o coelho para comer, veio outro com rouba e o cara fica com fome. Você precisa tomar cuidado só. Não tem como evitar isso. É só tomar cuidado.
There's a lot of violence. I would say violence here depends on the neighborhood you're in. So if you're in a neighborhood that has a lot of foot traffic, there tends to be less violence. But some neighborhoods which are strictly residential, no foot traffic at all, tend to be a little more dangerous because people don't really see what's going on and people tend to be more violent. I've been held up a couple of times. I think the only time it was really violent was once about 15 years ago. I did have a gun pointed to me and they took my wallet and cell phone. The other times it was just pickpocketing, something you'll find in any major city in the world. You just have to be very alert and very aware of your belongings. So I think that's it.
The 90s crime wave also brought in a large market of civilian bulletproof cars. It's estimated that up to 50,000 bulletproof vehicles drive around the city, the world's largest civilian bulletproof fleet, with their inches-thick glass windows. Nowadays, bulletproof cars are very common and easy to spot through the streets of São Paulo. There is even a large market for used bulletproof cars. Something that would be rare in first world countries has become normal in São Paulo, as well as all over Brazil. Despite all this alarm, the city is still a safe place, and most locals go through their routines without ever witnessing or falling victim to armed robbery or other forms of criminal activity. There's a sense of awareness that locals have learned to maintain, such as avoiding wearing expensive jewelry, staying away from unsafe regions at night, and not waving their wallets and cell phones about. A common theft strategy by criminals is the bicycle drive-by swipe, where thieves rush by on bikes and yank belongings from distracted civilians. Crimes that range from vandalism to terror can also be witnessed, such as cars and buses that are set on fire, sometimes as pranks by unsupervised teenagers, or as sheer terrorism by criminal factions that elected officials fail to control. Keeping alert while in public has become basic behavior to locals, and tourists are always advised to do the same. Of all Brazilian capitals, São Paulo is ranked as the safest. It's on the streets that São Paulo hosts most of its artistic and cultural events. This cultural uprising has given the city new energy.
Carnival, traditionally São Paulo was not a carnival city. Actually, people left São Paulo during Carnival and went to other cities or either the beach or Rio, so there wasn't that much of carnival culture here. And then later they had the samba school, so you had the traditional parade. You have the same thing in São Paulo, and it's gotten better every year. But one aspect of Carnival, which you had a lot in Rio and in Minas Gerais, are the free Carnival blocos, which happen on the street. They happen on the street, you have a band who play instruments, and they're free of charge. Salvador in Bahia has this street carnival, but you have to pay a very expensive fee and it's all roped in, so you go into the bloco, but it's all roped in and you pay a hefty fee actually to be part of that. But places like Rio and in the interior of the state called Minas Gerais have these street affairs in which you didn't pay much, you didn't pay anything, and you just participated in the bloco. And that has come to São Paulo full throttle last 5 years. Actually, several blocos which existed in Rio have opened their franchises in São Paulo, so this has grown a lot. So more and more people are choosing to stay in São Paulo instead of traveling during Carnival, because there's a lot going on during Carnival. And different than Salvador, for example, here Carnival is free of charge. You don't have to spend money to have fun. You just go out on the street and you'll have a block playing music with people, drinking, and you don't have to, well, you have to pay for your drink, but you have to pay to be a part of it. Difference in Salvador, you have to pay a very hefty fee to be part of the blocos there.
Quando a gente veio para São Paulo em 2011 com o Banga, São Paulo já tinha seus blocos também, eu não sei o nome de todos, mas conheço, eu sei que o Pasmado era um bloco antigo, o Gary Gary é um bloco super antigo de São Paulo, né, que é uma história incrível, sabe? A partir desse momento a gente veio trazendo também essa força para cá e hoje, depois que o Banga veio para cá, hoje a gente, com uma oficina de percussão, né, formando batuqueiros, e com o nosso desfile da rua mostrando que era possível, hoje a gente tem 857 blocos.
Há sociedades de concerto que apresentam programas importantíssimos, trazendo orquestras relevantes do exterior, intérpretes também relevantes.
Alguns jornais já estão falando do assunto jazz em São Paulo, né? Teve uma matéria grande, entendeu? Então, né, é um incentivo, né? A música instrumental está com público. Cresceu muito o público de música instrumental em São Paulo. Então, se cresceu o público, claro que os meios econômicos vão ter interesse também, entendeu? Vão ter interesse de atender esse público. Aí esse público vai querer, quando a pessoa quer ouvir uma música, quer ver um elemento artístico, ele vai atrás, ele vai procurar onde tem.
Há 52 anos que eu não me apresentava no Teatro Municipal e tenho uma apresentação marcada. Por quê? Porque o Teatro Municipal ficou destinado depois à ópera, à balé, a orquestras, etc. E o chamado recital, ele perdeu a sua eficácia, diria eu, dentro do Teatro Municipal. Há uma luz no fim do túnel. Parece que esses recitais eles estão tendo um excelente público, porque eles são realizados às 20 horas. 20 horas, aqueles que trabalham no centro acabam de trabalhar 18 horas, vão comer um lanche, ou vão jantar ali perto, vão ao teatro e depois voltam para suas casas.
Realmente, nós tivemos um espaço aí com poucas casas noturnas, música ao vivo. Estão voltando, algumas casas que são mais antigas estão persistindo, né? E eu acho que a cidade vai voltar a ser um centro cultural em relação à música, vai ser muito forte, né? Tem uma geração nova que está estudando e essa geração nova quer tocar, quer participar dessa atividade cultural e fazendo pressão para que a cidade tenha, né, essa vivência, né, essa música, essa atmosfera aí, né? E o jazz não é só instrumental, é o jazz vocal também, né? Eu encaro até que nem seria jazz, música ao vivo, entendeu? Mas com uma qualidade legal, com um nível cultural bom, entendeu? Que todo mundo vai gostar, todo mundo, independente do seu nível de conhecimento ou não. Né? São Paulo era assim na década de 50 e 60, né? O Brasil era assim, o Rio de Janeiro era assim, né? E muitos até artistas de outros países vinham para o Brasil interessados no que a gente está fazendo aqui, fazendo essa mistura, né? E tá voltando, eu estou vendo, atualmente eu vejo até alguns músicos estrangeiros vindo aqui em São Paulo, né? Onde eu moro, né? Não sei em outros lugares, mas aqui pesquisando, então tá tendo essa volta.
A questão da cidade também, ela oferece atrações culturais de graça, isso não tem no Rio, tudo no Rio é muito mais caro. Para você ter um pouco de cultura no Rio é mais caro. Ipanema tem teatros maravilhosos, ótimo. Só que para você ir no teatro em Ipanema é R$60, sabe? Nem todo mundo tem R$60 para pagar uma peça de teatro. Aqui em São Paulo você consegue peças incríveis, de grupos incríveis, de graça, às vezes super barato. Não só peças, enfim, qualquer atração cultural em São Paulo é muito barato. Questão de museu também, aqui a questão cultural aqui em São Paulo é muito maior. Eu acho que isso que faz a população crescer. Tanto que você vê, infelizmente eu sou carioca, mas tem que admitir, a gente vê uma diferença muito grande de cultura mesmo, de educação. E eu acho que parte disso vem dessa facilidade que as pessoas têm aqui em acessar centros culturais e ter acesso a tudo de graça.
É uma cidade atuante. A gente vê aqui grande parte usando hoje como referência os leilões e 30%, talvez até 40% são pessoas que circulam, que vêm de outros estados consumir na cidade. Eu já tive clientes que deixaram de estar presentes porque não encontraram hotel disponível na noite do leilão. E que hoje também, pela internet, pelo telefone, as pessoas não deixam de participar do leilão. É uma cidade atuante, as exposições são constantes e todo esse campo criando toda uma perspectiva, não só de artistas locais, mas também de todo o Brasil. O que difere do Rio de Janeiro, que até no final dos anos 70, pelo fato de ser capital, estava lá tudo concentrado. Depois dessa descentralização, a capital mudando para Brasília, etc., todas essas atuações, não só no Brasil, mas é em São Paulo que todas essas coisas se concentram. Hoje o artista, para se lançar no mundo ou no Brasil, ele primeiro tem que atuar em São Paulo.
E hoje nós verificamos que o Rio tem problema seríssimo com suas orquestras, com suas programações, etc. E está numa situação realmente muito difícil, que todos nós esperamos que, para o bem do Brasil e para o bem do Rio de Janeiro, sobretudo, que tudo isso passe, né?
From the early 20th century, Brazil was already earning global attention for its rich musical scene. Carlos Gomes, from Campinas in São Paulo State, and Heitor Villa-Lobos, from Rio, were quickly recognized as brilliant New World composers. By the mid-20th century, Brazil's main cultural exports were pretty much music, and obviously soccer. They continue to be two of the country's most important cultural symbols. As you can see, both art and sport played in just about every nook and cranny imaginable. Still, new local talents and other art forms have begun to flourish as well.
Bom, a posição do país mudou muito, sabe? Então ele passou a ser representativo não só de uma maneira que talvez há 30, 40 se olhava como só músicos ou jogadores de futebol. Hoje os artistas contemporâneos brasileiros ocupam em leilões e galerias no exterior e mesmo em grandes museus. Vou citar apenas um, a Tate Gallery, o MoMA de Nova York, que eles vêm hoje buscar e buscar artistas através de curadores próprios. Eles não procuram só os críticos e diretores de museus no Brasil para informarem quem são os artistas importantes que eles possam levar no exterior. Eles trazem diretores de curadores do exterior para fazerem aqui a pesquisa e levarem para fora. Quer dizer, esses artistas hoje têm uma consolidação de mercado não só nacional como internacional. Houve uma descoberta, principalmente de artistas dos anos 50, 60, que têm abertura nos principais museus ou instituições, tanto nos Estados Unidos como na Europa. E hoje esses artistas brasileiros que estão atuando e contemporâneos brigam no sentido de importância de preço com qualquer artista do exterior. Houve uma descoberta em relação não só a esses autores, mas em relação ao Brasil em si, como celeiro de grandes artistas plásticos.
Eu tenho a impressão que mudou o cenário, porque com a aparição da Sala São Paulo, houve um estímulo maior.
A cidade sempre vai ser carro-chefe. A cidade é a alicerce em relação a todas as coisas que acontecem no Brasil e não podia deixar de ser nas artes plásticas de uma maneira em geral. É referência, não é? É exemplo e a princípio, mesmo as demais capitais do Brasil, quando eventualmente lançam ou procuram algum artista, primeiro veem se saiu da cidade de São Paulo para poderem eventualmente serem lançados fora.
Olha, hoje existe um pessoal, tem um pessoal novo que está fazendo esse tipo de música, né? Porque o jazz de São Paulo, na minha opinião, né, é uma característica da união de vários estilos, né? Da união do jazz americano, da música brasileira, né? E às vezes o jazz com o baião, jazz com o samba, né? São Paulo sempre foi muito eclético nisso, né? Inclusive temos até o jazz com a música oriental aqui em São Paulo. Tem grupos trabalhando nesse sentido. Olha, nós temos o Jazz B, nós temos o Jazz dos Fundos, Off Jazz, né? O Caucasa, nós temos o Restaurante Mancini com a pizzaria ali, né? Que faz uma música vocal e instrumental também. Tem agora um bar chamado Bar Raiz, que é mesmo um sótão assim, também está começando a investir em música instrumental, né? E outros bares que estão surgindo aí. Então, assim, são poucos que eu falei, deve ter outros aí que eu não lembro, né? Mas já está começando a aparecer mais. E vai aparecer mais, né? Aparecendo mais, vai se organizar melhor as coisas, né? Tem pessoas que tocam na rua jazz, entendeu? Tem muita gente fazendo isso, né? Um pequeno espaço, como diz até um pessoal, tendo uma tomada, um espaço a gente vai tocar, né? E isso vai, sei lá, vai ajudar as pessoas a ter contato maior, né? E a música é uma coisa que é essencial para o ser humano. É um elemento artístico, né? Que a pessoa tendo contato, você muda realmente a sua vida.
perhaps the most valuable wave of immigrants to come to São Paulo and Brazil arrived against their will on slave ships. The African influence on all of Brazil's culture and art is prominent, with absolutely beautiful results.
Somos a escola do samba de verdade. Está em nossas mãos. Todas as áreas, toda a comunidade vai. Simbora, gente!
Eu acredito que, de uma maneira em geral, amor e ódio, não é? Amor é porque é uma cidade que dá tudo. E ódio porque o trânsito aqui é complicado.
Many cities in the world are known for hectic traffic, and São Paulo definitely stands out in that respect. Lanes are tight and gridlock is routine. Traffic jams are so serious that back in 1997, a law was established to diminish gridlock during rush hour. Vehicles with license plates ending in specific numbers were prohibited from circulating between peak hours once a week.
É caótica, né? A cidade se pensa que vai chegar 3 horas, sei lá, 2 horas para levar para chegar no lugar, demora mais, né?
A lot of things depend on cars, and that leads to a lot of traffic. Some things have been done. They have the bus lanes, which are exclusive for buses, so you can get one place to another faster. You have the subway, but it's not enough of it. So things are, I think slowly things are getting better, but it's not up to standard for a city this big.
One of the more representative aspects of the relatively controlled chaos in São Paulo's traffic is the abundant lane splitting by motorcycles. It is commonplace to witness motorcycles weaving dangerously in between lanes of endless traffic jams. Motorcycles began growing in numbers in the mid-90s as the demand grew for courier services that could get across town faster than cars. Until the early 2000s, most of the motorcycles seen whizzing through traffic were these couriers known as motoboys. Soon, other civilians of varied professions noticed that motorcycles could be useful for everyone, not just courier services. Today, you see business executives, people from all walks of life, opting for this efficient but highly dangerous mode of transportation. The most common kinds of traffic accidents in São Paulo are those involving motorcycles, and are a huge risk for those who choose the two-wheel lane-splitting strategy as their mode of transportation. With the almost unfair advantage of cars over motorcycles, a sort of brotherhood has emerged, where drivers of two-wheeled vehicles gang up to defend each other from the battle with cars for space on pavement. People are used to this intense relationship over asphalt, and usually get along well, but once in a while, conflicts do arise. São Paulo's traffic can also serve as a portrait of the Brazilian attitude of taking shortcuts to get around laws. It's common to see drivers infringing traffic regulations. motorcyclists driving on sidewalks and running red lights. All this establishes an even higher degree of chaos on the packed streets in and around the city. On the other hand, the city has established itself as a crib for national revolution. The country had its independence declared by the banks of the Ipiranga River back in 1822. Through the years, political movements have depended on the city's national influence, and even the more recent protests, known as the Vinegar Uprisings, began on Paulista Avenue. Protesting has become a routine of hope for Brazilians, and São Paulo has gotten the spotlight in leading these initiatives. A new style of protesting has emerged, inspired by Argentina's political demonstrations of banging on pots and pans, known as panelazos. São Paulo's political awareness is so dedicated that the Association of Commerce created a taxonomy, like the national debt clock in New York, that keeps count of the amount of taxes paid by Brazilians each year. Brazilians, and São Paulo locals as well, are known for their joyful nature. The World Cup, which had its opening game in São Paulo, was the perfect demonstration of this receptive and kind attitude that locals exhibit.
Se ele for estrangeiro, quando ele volta ao exterior, ele fala, eu toquei no Brasil, foi uma maravilha, eu conheço colegas lá nos países europeus que falam, adorei o Brasil, fui muito bem recebido, e realmente são bem recebidos.
Tourists from all over the globe were virtually unanimous on reverencing Brazilians' kind and welcoming posture. Even in conditions of poverty, Brazilians are capable of demonstrating an upbeat energy and positive outlook. Tens of thousands of unemployed citizens revert to informal commerce, forming legions of vendors and thousands of street corners and traffic stops. They are true heroes in a nation that fails in providing formal job opportunities. One marketing strategy is the side mirror advertising, where vendors place a note on the side mirror of cars. They walk through the lanes, placing and collecting these notes, eventually making some cash in exchange for candy or other treats. One can find vendors selling everything from cell phone chargers to road maps, toys, and souvenirs. Relative to the rest of Brazil, the state and city of São Paulo have remained at least one step ahead in growth and prosperity. Numerous less developed regions like the northeast of the country have a large amount of seats in Congress, but tend to fall to corruption, resulting in wider poverty in their politicians' home states.
Eu acho que o que nós estamos vivendo hoje, que nós estamos vivendo sobre a égide da corrupção, infelizmente. E uma vez, conversando com uma saudosa amiga, feirante, ela vendia tomate, ela morreu, infelizmente, e aí eu perguntei, eu via sempre um cidadão, eu comprava tomate dessa senhora, e eu vi um cidadão estranho, lá já, cabelo branco, no mortal. E um dia eu perguntei, esse senhor sempre entra atrás da barraca? Então ela me falou um dia, ela falou assim, ele é da fiscalização. E aí? E o que tem? Ele falou assim, não, todo mês, toda semana, todas as bancas, ele recolhe alguma benesse. Né? E eu falei, e se por acaso você não tiver de acordo? Se não tiver de acordo, ele vai encontrar algum defeito numa cesta. Né? E aí vai me aplicar uma grande multa. E eu falei, e você acha certo? Eu falei assim, ela falou, não há outra solução. Para você ver, então, para você ver uma pequena coisa. Tá? E daí agora, no momento do que está acontecendo hoje, da grande corrupção, o Brasil está enterrado nisto. teria que haver uma reformulação absolutamente geral, não sei, por isso que eu sou absolutamente a favor da Lava Jato, espero que ela continue, não sei se ela vai ter, vão deixar que ela chegue até o fim, porque quase todo mundo está implicado, é uma vergonha, eu acho que é uma vergonha, e isto embaraça o nosso desenvolvimento, embaraça tudo. Né?
Brazil lacks political unity and wastes valuable assets in its kingdom.
And understand that Brazil is very blessed with lots of natural resources.
Rich natural resources are a fortunate credit line for a nation's prosperity, but poor management of these resources can backfire, as happened in the 2015 catastrophic mining spill on a major river in southeast Brazil. This duality of a blessed soil and a history of failed governments cripples a lot of the national potential.
I'm here at Botequim do Cezinha, one of the city's countless bars where one can enjoy São Paulo's bohemian lifestyle. The nightlife alone is a reason to come to the city and will always exceed expectations.
I've heard a lot that the São Paulo nightlife is one of the best in the world. It's almost at par with Miami or Amsterdam or Ibiza. So I'm also looking forward to check out how it is.
Among the several different neighborhoods where partying occurs in São Paulo, Vila Madalena has become the most famous.
A Vila Madalena antes era super residencial e agora está com bastante comércio. Está bem conhecida.
Its nightlife actually begins at noon every day, especially on weekends or during carnival holidays or other celebrations. During the World Cup, Vila Madalena spontaneously became the hottest region, where a full-blown carnival-style party occurred all throughout the game. Even though the official World Cup centers other regions like downtown, tourists and locals chose to enjoy the games in Vila Madalena. The downside is that it has become difficult to manage all the garbage and party side effects left behind in the streets. But city management has amped up its crew to keep the neighborhood in perfect state.
Well, I think back in the day when I did go out a lot when I was younger, the clubs, a lot of clubs, major clubs. Traditionally, you go to a club and drink, dance, and leave the club. The clubs would close very late, 4 or 5, even 6 a.m. There's no such thing as a curfew here. You don't have to, by law, close something. I wasn't really into that, but many people went to the after hours. So after the club closed, you have places that would open purposely at 6 a.m. and go on till 12 p.m. The whole after hours scene, so that's really strong. Lately, I think it's changed a bit. The whole club model is not that strong anymore. Now you have parties, which you have to buy tickets for ahead of time, and they're held in different venues. And generally venues that are not a club, so you have a museum that will have a certain party and you buy a ticket beforehand and you go to that party at a museum. So a thing that changes a lot, and it's not fixed in the clubs. And another thing that has changed is that there are a lot of rooftops now. So I always thought it was funny that a city like São Paulo didn't use the rooftops of the buildings as much as they do in a city like New York, for example. And now there's several rooftops coming up and places you can really get a nice view of the city. Many places are opening like that. And I think what's also good is that the nightlife also ties into what you can do. You can grab a burger at 5 a.m. You can go to a padaria, which is a traditional bakery, and have food after you go out. So I think there's a lot of things going on at night and late night, which is good.
Several nightclubs, such as The Edge, famous for its quality electronic music, are spread throughout the city. Another globally revered quality of the city is its restaurant circuit, with world-class eateries.
Well, São Paulo always had a very good food scene, especially on a national level. It's unparalleled within the country. And we have had several good restaurants, especially Italian, French restaurants, a lot of Japanese restaurants. In São Paulo, traditionally, you'd find cuisines that represent the greatest influx of immigrants here, so a lot of Japanese cuisine and all its varieties. It might be noodles, it might be Japanese fried food, Japanese comfort food, sushi, high-end sushi, so all the varieties due to the large amount of Japanese immigrants here. Italians, the same thing, high-end cuisine, high-end restaurants, comfort food, Italian restaurants. A lot of Brazilian local cuisine, which ranges a lot, because here in São Paulo, you have more regional cuisine, which involves more meat, rice, and beans. And in the Northeast, you have food which resembles Thai food or even Indian food that takes a lot of coconut milk and seafood, and that you can find here. Very high-end. A lot of meat, very good steakhouses. Brazilian steakhouses are known around the world, so that has done very well. And now you can find a greater range of things, so you have the better burger or the gourmet burger, which you call it, all over the place. You have a lot of the ethnic foods now you didn't find in the past. There's always a lot of Lebanese food, but they always had their traditional cooking, but you didn't find the street food such as falafel and kebabs and shawarma. Now you find that a lot due to the Syrian immigrants. And more recently you've seen other ethnicities and other different types of food coming in. A lot of Peruvian ceviche. You have a lot of Thai food and Asian food, but Korean barbecue, Asian sandwiches, which is the bao, even American food, which back in the day was more seen as fast food. Now you have the proper American food, mac and cheese, barbecue, brisket, smoked meats, all that. So you really find everything here.
In the last 9 years of my travels across the world, I have never seen so much beautiful women at one, in one country. And that too so elegant, so full of energy, so vibrant.
Ethnic diversity is one of the seeds of the beauty revered by foreign visitors. Brazilians' predisposition to fashion and art, and the weather that encourages lighter clothing, adds up to a more image-driven culture. Partying is one of the symbols of this nation. It does impose a lot more smiling and socializing into its people routine. In recent years, a vast transformation has occurred in São Paulo's transportation sector. It began with several lanes of traffic being isolated for bicycles on Sundays. The crowds that gathered for these weekend bike rides were humongous, which in turn increased overall interest for new permanent lanes specifically built for bicycles. The city has now seen hundreds of kilometers of new bike lanes constructed in the main avenues and side streets all over town. Truth be told, bicycles were already present in traffic, dangerously riding alongside motor vehicles. In 2015, Paulista Avenue had its bike lane inauguration held, and so the city's landscape changed forever, and for the better. This virtuous cycle has brought in more and more citizens who adhere to bicycles as their main mode of transportation, not just for weekend leisure, but for everyday commuting needs. The city is also becoming more organized for pedestrians, with exclusive lanes as well. Several investments in public transportation have been made, such as exclusive bus lanes and new subway stations with modern trains.
We do have a very good subway system, but it's not enough. I mean, people say it caters to 33% of what we really need in São Paulo. We actually need 3 times more subways, 3 times more trains. It's not adequate for the city.
An issue with Brazil is how slowly many of these structural improvements are delivered. A new monorail is built, intended to be ready for the World Cup in 2014. As ridiculous as it may seem, only 2 stations were completed, just for show. The rest of the construction, extending miles and miles through various parts of town, continues at a glacial pace. what was supposed to be ready for the 2014 World Cup hasn't even been finished for the following World Cup in 2018 in Russia. The jury is out whether they'll complete it by 2022, 2 World Cups after the deadline. São Paulo has been implementing atypical measures in its urban scenery, such as a ban on outdoor advertising. It was intended not only to reduce visual pollution to a minimum, but also allow its multitude of buildings, especially those with architectural beauty, to be free of unsightly banners and signs. The ban is evident at the very moment you leave the city limits, and notice an overflow of advertising from the get-go. A study by a consulting firm hired by the Brazilian government has concluded that the country would greatly benefit from brain gain, a mode of immigration that corresponds to new professionals in specialized fields. The study indicated that Brazil lacks engineers, architects, and physicians, among other fields. A few influential personalities with retrograde nationalistic views tend to believe that Brazil would lose its cultural identity by adhering more and more to globalization. They point out that teenagers walking around with NBA jerseys, listening to hip-hop, and eating cheeseburgers are a symptom of an Americanization of Brazil. The US and Brazil are actually more alike than most people realize. They're both equivalent in size, ethnicity, and origin, having been colonized by European nations and eventually gaining their freedom. That said, Brazilian culture is strong enough to hold its own, regardless of foreign influence.
O bar está bem conhecido no exterior. Hoje tem muito mais estrangeiro para cá.
São Paulo is a powerful urban setting that has been growing more and more interesting in the eyes of the world. An increase in international visitors has been evident in the past 10 years, and their presence has only been beneficial. As locals have come to realize, the positive influence from abroad can be more valuable than what the government can do for its Brazilian electorate. Foreign visitors have been the ideal inspiration for São Paulo's growth. And, as always, because São Paulo is in the lead, Brazil will follow.
Para onde eu quero ir, o que eu quero fazer, como eu quero chegar, tudo começou a ser friamente calculado e eu aprendi isso aqui em São Paulo. Né? Você poderia ter aprendido isso no Rio? Poderia. Poderia ter aprendido isso na Bahia? Poderia. Mas foi aqui que eu aprendi. Então, eu tenho esse carinho enorme por São Paulo ter me ajudado nesse processo de transformação, saca? E São Paulo é uma cidade que acolhe muito bem também, saca? Você vem pra cá, você abre um leque de esperança também, de certa forma, sabe? Tenho um carinho enorme por aqui, meu. Posso até dizer que amo a cidade.
Mas eu sinto que todos eles criam raízes, aqueles que eventualmente têm talento e aqui ficam, aqui depois se desenvolvem e acabam amando a cidade como todos nós.
Vem morena, me namorar, com seu swing me conquistar. Vem morena, vem dançar, com seu cabelo me encantar. Vem morena, me namorar, com seu swing me conquistar. Vem morena, vem dançar, com seu cabelo me encantar. Vem cá, morena. Me abraçar, vem morena aqui ficar, no seu caminho eu quero estar. Vem morena, vem passear, com seu jeitinho me abraçar, vem morena.